The war chamber of the Velthric Ascendancy hummed with the sound of 1,000 processors analyzing the final variable. High Arbiter Kessindra stood before the holographic display, her chitit exoskeleton reflecting the pale blue light that painted tactical projections across the obsidian floor. Around her, the Council of Extinction gathered representatives from 47 species who had never lost a calculated engagement in 3,000 years of galactic expansion. "The probability matrices are complete," announced Technological Overseer Vin, his 6 eyes blinking in sequence as data streams filtered through his neural implants. "Humanity's defensive capabilities have been measured, cataloged, and integrated into our predictive algorithms. The siege of Earth will conclude in precisely 6 minutes and 43 seconds from initial engagement." Kessindra's mandibles clicked together in satisfaction. The humans had been troublesome, yes. They had spread across their solar system with alarming speed, establishing colonies on barren moons and extracting resources from asteroid fields with the kind of reckless determination that other species found distasteful. But they were young, barely 400 years into their space age. They had no allies, no advanced weaponry, no understanding of how true warfare was conducted among the elder races. 6 minutes seems generous," remarked Ambassador Thelen, the Quarren representative whose species had mastered quantum warfare before humanity had discovered agriculture. His crystalline form pulsed with amber skepticism. "The calculation accounts for every documented human vessel," Vin explained, manipulating the holographic display to show Earth's orbital defenses. "Their largest warship, the UHNS Indomitable, masses 400,000 metric tons. Our smallest dreadnought masses 8 million. They have constructed particle beam arrays on their moon, yes. But the power output is barely sufficient to scratch our shielding. They have missile platforms, conventional kinetic weapons, and what they call nuclear deterrence." Then paused, his expression approximating what humans might call amusement. "We encountered nuclear fission weapons 17,000 years ago. They were considered primitive then. The humans still believe they are devastating." "Then why 6 minutes?" pressed Thelen. "Why not 6 seconds?" "Because humans are unpredictable in one specific way," Kessindra interjected. "They fight beyond the point of logic. They continue even when mathematics declares victory impossible. Our models account for this psychological anomaly. We estimate they will attempt 3 major defensive maneuvers before accepting defeat. Each will fail. Each will cost them approximately 2 minutes of futile struggle. We add 43 seconds as a margin for unexpected desperation tactics." The council murmured their approval. It was a sound like wind through crystal chimes, beautiful and cold. "What are our projected losses?" asked General Morath, the Krendon military strategist whose species had conquered 40 systems through perfectly executed sieges. "Negligible," Vin replied. "Perhaps 3 escort frigates if they manage to concentrate their entire orbital defense grid on specific targets. The probability of damage to any vessel larger than a frigate is 0.003%. The probability of losing a capital ship is too small to calculate meaningfully. In their population? 7 billion on the homeworld. Another 2 billion scattered across their colonies. We are not here for extermination, merely subjugation. Post-conquest casualties are estimated at 23% during the pacification period, standard for a resistant species." Kessindra studied the rotating image of Earth, that blue marble spinning in space, ignorant of the armada gathering at the edge of its solar system. The humans had named their planet after dirt. This alone suggested a fundamental lack of imagination, a provincial mindset that could never comprehend the scope of the Ascendancy's dominion. "Commence the operation," she commanded. "Let us bring another world under civilized governance." The holographic display shifted, showing the Ascendancy's fleet beginning its acceleration toward the inner system. 600 warships, each a masterpiece of destructive engineering, began their final approach to Earth. The largest of them, the Eternal Mandate, measured 17 kilometers from prow to stern and carried enough firepower to sterilize a planet's surface in under an hour. Vin's console chimed. "We are receiving a transmission from Earth's Unified Defense Command. Audio only. They lack the technology for proper holographic communication." "Let us hear their surrender," Kessindra said, gesturing for the message to be played. The voice that filled the war chamber was male, speaking in the human language called English, with a translation matrix providing real-time conversion. This is Admiral Marcus Wren of the United Human Naval Service broadcasting to the unidentified fleet approaching Earth. You have entered sovereign territory without permission. State your intentions or be considered hostile. Several council members made sounds indicating amusement. The translation matrix struggled to convey the nuances, what humans would recognize as condescending laughter. Transmit our response, Kessindra ordered. Admiral Wren, this is High Arbiter Kessindra of the Velthric Ascendancy, speaking on behalf of the Galactic Council. Your species has been evaluated and found suitable for incorporation into civilized space. Surrender your defensive systems and prepare for transition to supervised governance. Resistance will be measured in minutes. Compliance will save billions of lives. A pause. 17 seconds while the message traveled and returned. That's a fancy way of saying you want to conquer us. Admiral Wren's voice came back. There was something in his tone that the translation matrix flagged as unusual, not fear, not anger, but something else. Something the system labeled as anticipatory satisfaction. Tell me, Arbiter, the human continued. Did your calculations account for humans being really bad at following orders we don't like? Kessindra's mandibles clicked in irritation. Your bravado is predictable, Admiral. It is already factored into our models. You will resist. You will fail. The mathematics are absolute. Mathematics, Wren repeated. Right. See, that's the thing about math. It only works if you have all the variables. Did you measure our defensive platforms? Every installation, every weapon, every power signature, Vin confirmed over the open channel, his pride evident. Good, Wren said. And you calculated how long we'd last in a straight fight? 6 minutes and 43 seconds from initial engagement to the collapse of your final defensive position, Kessindra replied. This conversation is reducing that time. Surrender now and I will ensure. 14 seconds, Wren interrupted. Silence filled the war chamber. Explain, Kessindra demanded. The engagement won't last 6 minutes, Arbiter. It's going to last 14 seconds. That's how long our calculations give you. Now there was laughter throughout the chamber, genuine and unrestrained. A human species barely capable of sustained fusion reaction was threatening the combined might of 47 advanced civilizations. Your defiance is noted and irrelevant, Kessindra replied. We will commence hostilities in 3 of your minutes. Use this time to evacuate non-combatants from your orbital stations. We are not without mercy. Appreciated, Wren said. And now there was definitely something like a smile in his voice. We'll use the time. One more thing, Arbiter. Your scans of our defensive systems, did you happen to notice anything unusual about our power signatures? Vin checked his displays, confusion crossing his features. The lunar installations show elevated power draw, but that is consistent with charging defensive systems. Nothing unusual. Nothing unusual, Wren repeated. Okay, just wanted to make sure you had the data. Wren out. The transmission ended. Talon's crystalline form pulsed with violet concern. That exchange was atypical. Humans facing certain defeat usually exhibit anger, desperation, or resignation. The Admiral showed none of these. He is attempting psychological warfare, General Moreth declared. Trying to introduce doubt. It is a common tactic of weaker species. Ignore it. But Kessindra found herself staring at the tactical display, at the elevated power readings from Earth's lunar installations. They were significant, perhaps 3 times normal baseline, but still nowhere near sufficient to pose a threat. The humans would need power readings 1,000 times higher to challenge Ascendancy shielding. Vin, run the calculations again, she ordered. Focus on those power signatures. High Arbiter, we have run 17,000 simulations. The result is invariant. 6 minutes and 43 seconds, plus or minus 30 seconds depending on human tactical choices. There is no scenario in. Run them again. Vin's exoskeleton rippled with resignation, but he complied. Numbers cascaded across displays. Probability curves twisted and reformed. The predictive algorithms hummed through their cycles. Unchanged, he reported. High Arbiter, the humans cannot win. It is mathematically impossible given their technological level. Whatever they are planning, It exists only as desperation theatrics. Kessindra wanted to believe him. The Ascendancy had never been wrong. Their calculations had predicted the outcome of every engagement for 3 millennia. They had conquered species with weapon systems the humans couldn't dream of. They had faced enemies who had mastered exotic physics in quantum warfare. But something about Admiral Wren's voice lingered in her mind. "Fleet status?" she asked. "All vessels report combat readiness," General Morath announced. "We are entering effective weapons range in 90 seconds. The humans are powering up their defensive platforms. Primitive kinetic batteries, chemical rocket interceptors, nuclear-tipped missiles." He paused. "They have launched their entire defensive wing, 200 manned fighters. A grand gesture, but they will be incinerated in the opening salvo." Kessindra watched those fighters on the display, tiny motes of metal and flesh erring toward the Ascendancy fleet. She knew each one carried a crew, humans who believed they could make a difference, who were willing to die for those 6 minutes and 43 seconds of futile resistance. There was something simultaneously pathetic and magnificent about it. 60 seconds to weapons range, Morath intoned. "All vessels charging primary arrays. The Eternal Mandate is targeting Earth's largest orbital platform. Estimated destruction time 4 seconds. The war chamber fell silent except for the soft hum of technology. Every species represented here had stood where humanity now stood, facing the overwhelming might of a superior force. Every species had either surrendered or been crushed. It was the natural order of galactic civilization. The strong guided the weak, and the weak either learned or perished. 30 seconds. Kessindra's tactical implant fed her real-time data from the fleet. Shields at maximum. Weapons fully charged. Point defense systems tracking the approaching human fighters and their pathetic missiles. It would be over before it truly began. 15 seconds. Human vessels are within our extreme range. They are not altering course, confirming they intend to engage. Brave and foolish, Thelem observed. A terminal combination. 10 seconds. Wait. Ven's 6 eyes blinked in rapid succession. High Arbiter, the power readings from the lunar installations. They are spiking. Exponentially. This doesn't match any known human technology. I'm reading this is impossible. Power output equivalent to a contained stellar reaction. But that would require technology they don't possess. Weapons range in 5 seconds. Morath barked. All vessels report. Wait, we're receiving multiple target locks from Earth's lunar surface. How are they tracking through our stealth fields? They shouldn't be able to. The holographic display exploded with light. Not metaphorically. The entire tactical projection went white as every sensor in the Ascendancy fleet screamed emergency warnings simultaneously. Kessindra's implant overloaded, severing her connection to prevent neural damage. Around the chamber, officers stumbled back from their consoles as data systems crashed under the weight of impossible readings. When the displays reset 3 seconds later, the fleet formation had changed. 23 capital ships were gone. Simply gone. The sensor readings showed debris fields where dreadnoughts had been, vapor clouds where cruisers had maintained formation, nothing where the Eternal Mandate had led the advance. Report! Kessindra's voice cracked through her translator. What happened? What did they hit us with? Vin was desperately trying to process the incoming data, his 6 eyes unfocused as his neural implants worked at maximum capacity. Unknown weapon system. Energy signature consistent with directed gamma-ray bursts, but at power levels that should be impossible. The beams, they punched through our shielding like it wasn't there. Multiple simultaneous strikes, targeting precision beyond anything in our database. Casualty count. 23 capital ships destroyed. Another 41 vessels reporting critical damage. That's, Vin's voice failed him. That's 160,000 dead. In the first 4 seconds of engagement. Impossible. The word rang through Kessindra's mind. They had lost more ships in 4 seconds than they had lost in 400 years of conquest. Return fire. All vessels, full assault. Destroy those lunar installations. The fleet obeyed. Every remaining warship opened fires simultaneously, filling the space between Earth and the Ascendancy formation with enough destructive energy to melt a planet. Missiles and particle beams and kinetic rounds and exotic matter warheads all converged on the moon's surface, and every single weapon was intercepted. The humans had deployed some kind of defensive grid that Ascendancy sensors had completely missed. Point defense systems of impossible precision were destroying incoming ordnance thousands of kilometers before impact. Energy shields that shouldn't exist were redirecting particle beams into space. The lunar surface remained untouched while the Ascendancy's attack shattered itself against invisible walls. How? Thildin's crystalline form was pulsing with crimson panic. How did we miss this? The scans were complete. We mapped every installation. They hid it, Lin whispered, his voice filled with something alien to Ascendancy officers. Terror. They deliberately showed us what we expected to see. Primitive power signatures. Conventional weapons. They let us calculate based on false data, and we never questioned it because humans aren't supposed to be capable of. The displays lit up again. Another salvo from Earth's lunar batteries. 7 more capital ships died in 2 seconds. Retreat! Kessindra shouted. All vessels, emergency jump. Get us out of. 3 of the fleet's dreadnoughts exploded before they could generate jump fields. Whatever weapons the humans were using, they were interfering with faster-than-light drives. The fleet was trapped, pinned in space while Earth's defenders methodically dismantled them. General Morath was frantically coordinating defensive maneuvers, but it was meaningless. The remaining warships were scattering, trying to present multiple targets, but the human weapons tracked them with perfect accuracy. Every shot found its target, every burst of impossible energy carved through shields and armor like they were paper. Kessindra watched her fleet die. She watched centuries of military doctrine become obsolete in seconds. She watched the mathematical certainty of Ascendancy's superiority crumble into burning debris. A transmission broke through the chaos. Admiral Wren's voice calm and professional. Ascendancy fleet. This is Admiral Wren. You have 13 seconds remaining in this engagement. Surrender now and we'll cease fire. Continue hostilities and you won't have enough ships left to carry survivors home. What are you? Kessindra demanded, her voice breaking. What did you do? The calculations were based on what we let you see, Wren replied. See, humans learned something important about 100 years back. We discovered we weren't alone in the universe, that there were older species out there watching us. We figured eventually someone would come knocking. Maybe friends, maybe not. So we prepared. Another 2 capital ships vanished from the tactical display. 10 seconds, Wren announced. You've got 206 warships left out of 600. I'd really prefer not to reduce that number further. Ceasefire, Kessindra commanded. All vessels, ceasefire and withdraw to extreme range. The surviving ships obeyed, their engines burning at maximum as they retreated from Earth's defensive envelope. The human weapons went silent, allowing the withdrawal but tracking each vessel with obvious targeting solutions. Better, Wren said. Now about those calculations of yours. You want to know what you missed? Kessindra couldn't speak. Her entire understanding of the universe had been shattered in 14 seconds. 40 years ago, we cracked the unified field problem, Wren continued, his voice carrying through the shocked silence of the war chamber. We figured out how to generate and focus power at levels you apparently thought were impossible. We built weapons that could have destroyed your fleet in 3 seconds instead of 14. But we needed to make sure you'd commit fully to the attack, had to let you get close, had to let you believe you'd already won. Why? Kessindra finally managed. Why hide this? Why not announce your capabilities? We would never have attacked if you'd known you'd have adapted. Wren interrupted. You'd have developed countermeasures, brought more ships, changed your tactics. No, we needed the galaxy to see this. We needed every species watching this engagement, and I know they're watching to understand something fundamental about humanity. A pause. In the war chamber, the council members stood frozen, their attention fixed on the transmission. We're not joining your ascendancy, Admiral Wren said. We're not accepting supervision or integration or any other polite word for conquest. We're staying independent, and anyone who decides to test that independence should remember what happened here today. Remember that humanity had 6 minutes to lose and ended the fight in 14 seconds instead. The transmission cut off. The emergency council session began 3 hours after the massacre. That was what they were calling it in the military channels. Not a battle, not an engagement, but a massacre. The Velthric Ascendancy had lost 394 warships, the largest single-day loss in their 3,000-year history. Another 176 vessels were so damaged they would require months of repair. Only 30 ships had escaped without significant damage. High Arbiter Kessindra stood before the assembled representatives, her exoskeleton still bearing scorch marks from an electrical fire that had broken out in the war chamber during the chaos. Around her, the faces of 47 species reflected various states of shock, anger, and fear. "Explain," Ambassador Thelm demanded, his crystalline form pulsing with aggressive orange. "Explain how the most comprehensive military intelligence operation in Ascendancy history failed to detect weapon systems that could obliterate our fleet. Explain how every calculation, every projection, every probability matrix was wrong. The humans deceived us," Kessindra replied, her voice steady despite the turmoil in her mind. "Deliberately and systematically, they allowed our surveillance probes to scan their installations. They permitted our intelligence networks to infiltrate their communications. They fed us data that suggested a technological level consistent with an early spacefaring civilization. All of it was theater." "Then what is their actual capability?" asked General Morath. The Krendon officer had aged visibly in the past 3 hours, his confidence replaced by something unfamiliar: uncertainty. Technological Overseer Venn stepped forward, his 6 eyes dim with exhaustion. "I have been analyzing the weapon signatures. The lunar installations that we believed were primitive particle beam arrays were in fact something entirely different. Gamma-ray lasers operating at coherence levels that require quantum-level precision and power generation equivalent to a Type II civilization on the Kardashev scale." Murmurs of disbelief rippled through the council chamber. "That's impossible," declared Science Coordinator Hillix, the Margoline representative whose species had pioneered advanced energy systems. "Type II civilizations can harness the total energy output of their star. Humans have barely achieved controlled fusion, but Type I at best, perhaps 0.8 on the scale. The energy requirements alone—" "They solved it," Venn interrupted. "I don't know how, but they solved quantum field manipulation at a level we've never achieved. Each lunar battery was drawing power from what appears to be contained artificial singularities, microscopic black holes held in suspension and tapped for energy extraction. The technology should not exist. By our understanding of physics and technological progression, they should be centuries away from this capability." "Then our understanding is wrong," Thelen stated flatly. "Or the humans are not what they appear to be. Could they be a remnant of the predecessors? Some hidden enclave that preserved ancient technology?" Kessindra had considered that possibility during her 3 hours of desperate analysis. The predecessors were the mythical progenitors of galactic civilization, the elder race that had seeded technology across the stars before vanishing 2 million years ago. Every advanced species owed their development to predecessor artifacts discovered on their homeworlds or in ancient ruins. "No," she said with certainty. "We have extensive genetic and archaeological data on humanity. They evolved naturally on Earth over millions of years. There is no connection to the predecessors. Their technology is their own, which makes this even more terrifying," General Morath said quietly. "If humans developed this independently in less than 5 centuries of spaceflight—" He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Every council member understood the implication. If humanity could progress from primitive chemical rockets to star-level energy manipulation in 400 years, they were advancing at a rate that defied every model of technological development. The Velthric Ascendancy had taken 6,000 years to reach their current level. The Kornan had required 12,000. Humanity had done it in centuries. "We need more information," Kessindra announced. "I am requesting permission to open formal diplomatic channels with Earth. Not conquest. Negotiation." "They destroyed our fleet," Ambassador Kren of the Torvak Combine snarled, his vocal sacs inflating with rage. "They killed 400,000 of our finest warriors. And you want to negotiate?" "They killed 400,000 because we attacked them," Kessindra shot back. "They defended their homeworld. Had the situation been reversed, we would have done the same. More importantly, they allowed survivors. They could have destroyed the entire fleet. Their weapons gave them that capability. Instead, they ceased fire when we retreated. A tactical decision, Kren argued. They wanted survivors to carry the message. Exactly, Kessindra agreed. They wanted communication, not extermination. That suggests they are open to dialogue. Or they're playing a longer game, Velthric interjected, his crystalline structure flickering with deep blue calculation. Demonstrate overwhelming force, intimidate potential rivals, establish dominance without the burden of occupation. It's actually elegant from a strategic perspective. The council chamber fell silent as members processed this assessment. It was true that occupying hostile territory required resources. The humans had achieved a military victory that would resonate across the galaxy while avoiding the complications of managing conquered worlds. I want to know how they did it, Helix said suddenly. Not just the weapons, the deception. How did they hide this level of technological sophistication? We had probes in their system. We monitored their communications. We tracked their resource allocation. Where did they hide the development of these systems? They manipulated a holographic display, bringing up images of Earth's solar system. I've been reviewing the data. The humans have extensive industrial facilities in their asteroid belt, automated mining and construction platforms. We observed them and cataloged them as simple resource extraction. But the power signatures, if I recalibrate our sensors to account for what we now know they're capable of, those facilities weren't just mining asteroids. The display zoomed in on a region of space between Mars and Jupiter. What had appeared to be scattered industrial platforms now resolved into something far more organized. A distributed network of manufacturing facilities, each individually small enough to avoid attention, but collectively representing an industrial capacity that rivaled anything in Ascendancy space. They built their weapons out there, Vin continued. Away from Earth, away from obvious observation. They transported them to the moon in pieces, assembled them in underground installations, and masked the power signatures until the moment of engagement. The coordination required, the operational security, it's remarkable. It's paranoid, Kren muttered. What species develops weapons like this in secret unless they're planning aggression? A species that expects to be attacked, Kessindra replied. She was remembering Admiral Wren's words. We figured eventually someone would come knocking. Maybe friends, maybe not. So we had humanity somehow known the Ascendancy would come? Had they encountered other species before official first contact? There were gaps in the historical record. Regions of space where probes had disappeared without explanation. The Ascendancy had attributed those losses to navigational hazards or equipment failure. What if humanity had been watching them for longer than anyone realized? We need to speak with them, she repeated. Not as conquerors, but as equals. Equals. Kren's voice dripped with contempt. You would elevate this species to our level after a single engagement? They elevated themselves, Kessindra corrected. We simply failed to notice. But I suspect many others did notice. I suspect there are species in this chamber who have information they haven't shared. She let her gaze sweep across the assembled representatives, looking for tells for any sign of prior knowledge. Most appeared genuinely shocked, but a very few, showed other reactions. The Margoline representative Helix was examining his datapad with perhaps too much focus. The Veshkar diplomat, usually aggressively opinionated, had remained silent throughout the entire session, and in the back of the chamber the observer from the Kathir Collective, a species that rarely involved themselves in Ascendancy politics, was watching the proceedings with what might have been satisfaction. Representative Helix, Kessindra called out, does the Margolin Confederation have information about human technological capabilities that wasn't shared with the attack fleet? Helix's chromatic skin patterns shifted through colors indicating discomfort. The Margolin Confederation conducts independent scientific surveys. These are not typically shared beyond our own research networks. That's not an answer. A long pause. Then Helix manipulated his pad, projecting a series of reports into the chamber's shared display. 8 years ago, we detected unusual gravitational anomalies in human space. Consistent with experimental singularity generation, we investigated and confirmed that humans were conducting high-energy physics experiments at a level inconsistent with their supposed technological stage. We assumed they had discovered a predecessor cache. It didn't seem relevant to share with the Ascendancy, As we had no territorial disputes with humanity, the chamber erupted with angry voices. Representatives demanding answers, accusing the Margolin of sabotage, questioning what other species might have hidden knowledge. Kessindra let the chaos build for 30 seconds before demanding silence. This confirms what I suspected. Humanity has been observed by multiple species, but none of us communicated. The Ascendancy operates under the assumption of information superiority. We believed our intelligence networks were comprehensive. They were not. She pulled up her own files, displaying them for all to see. I am sharing all data collected on humanity during our reconnaissance phase. I am demanding that every species present do the same. We need a complete picture of what humanity is capable of, and we need it before we make our next move. Our next move should be mobilization, General Morath stated. Gather the full might of the Ascendancy. Humanity may have won this engagement, but they cannot stand against our combined forces. We have 300 more dreadnoughts in reserve, 6,000 cruisers, 100,000 support vessels. We could sterilize their entire solar system and lose another fleet doing it. Kessindra replied. General, they destroyed our forces in 14 seconds. They were playing with us. Did you not hear Admiral Wren's statement? They could have ended the engagement in 3 seconds. They deliberately extended it to 14 to ensure we understood the message. What message? Morath demanded. That they're strong? We can be stronger. That they're stronger than they need to be. Kessindra corrected. That they've been preparing for this for decades. That they anticipated our attack, our tactics, our response times. General, we walked into a trap so sophisticated we didn't recognize it as a trap until it closed. How many more traps do you think they've prepared? How many other weapon systems did they not reveal? What other surprises await any fleet we send? The general opened his mouth to respond, then closed it. The chamber fell into uneasy silence. I propose we send a diplomatic envoy, Kessindra said. A small delegation, unarmed, with a message of peaceful negotiation. We learn what humanity wants, what their intentions are, whether coexistence is possible. And, if they refuse? Asked Ambassador Thelen. If they decide to use their advantage to attack us, then we'll know we're dealing with an aggressive expansionist power, and we can respond accordingly. But if we attack first, if we escalate this conflict, we confirm every suspicion they have about galactic civilization. We prove that might makes right. That advanced species exist only to dominate younger ones. Is that the legacy we want? It was a rhetorical question, but Kessindra saw uncertainty in many faces. The Ascendancy had been built on the principle of ordered hierarchy, older species guiding younger ones, strength maintaining stability. It was a system that had worked for 3 millennia. Until today, I will support the diplomatic mission, Alex announced. The Margolin Confederation values scientific exchange. If humans have achieved this level of capability independently, their research could revolutionize our understanding of physics. The Corman hegemony also supports negotiation, Thel added, though we reserve the right to defensive preparations should diplomacy fail. Slowly, other voices joined. Not all, some species remained committed to military response, but enough, a majority. Kessindra felt something she hadn't experienced in hours. Hope. Then we are agreed, she said. I will lead the diplomatic delegation personally. We depart with— No need to depart, a new voice interrupted. Every being in the chamber spun toward the sound. Standing in the entrance, unauthorized and impossible, was a human, a female, relatively young by their standards, wearing what appeared to be a formal uniform. She was smiling. I'm sorry for the dramatic entrance, she said in perfect Velthric, her translator apparently far more sophisticated than it should be. But when we heard you were planning to send an envoy, we figured we'd save you the trip. I'm Dr. Sarah Okaro, representing the United Human Diplomatic Corps. I believe we have some things to discuss. Security officers were moving toward her, weapons raised, but Kessindra held up a hand. How did you get aboard this station? Our security systems— Yeah, about those, Dr. Okoro said, still smiling. Our security is actually pretty good by most standards, but we've been inside your networks for about 6 years now. Ever since you started planning the invasion. Really, we've been monitoring your movements, your communications, Your strategic planning sessions. She looked around the chamber. Nice place, by the way. Very dramatic architecture. The implications hit Kessindra like a physical blow. 6 years. The humans had been inside their most secure systems for 6 years. They had known the invasion was coming. They had watched the preparations. They had seen every calculation, every simulation, every strategic discussion. They had known exactly what the Ascendancy expected, which meant they could craft their deception perfectly. "You've been spying on us," General Morath growled. "That's an act of war. You were planning to conquer us," Dr. Okoro replied calmly. "That's also an act of war. We just happened to find out about it first." She walked further into the chamber, her movements casual despite being surrounded by potentially hostile aliens. "Look, I'm not here to argue about who started what. I'm here because my government believes we got off on the wrong foot and we'd like to try again." "Try again?" Kren laughed bitterly. "You destroyed our fleet. You humiliated the Ascendancy. And now you want to negotiate?" "We defended ourselves," Dr. Okoro corrected. "There's a difference. You came to conquer. We refused. That's not aggression. That's self-determination." She looked directly at Kessindra. "High Arbiter, you mentioned wanting to understand what humanity wants. I can tell you, we want what every species wants: to live freely, to develop our civilization according to our own values, to explore the universe without being crushed by powers who think age equals authority." "And if the Ascendancy refuses to accept human independence?" Kessindra asked. "Then we remain independent anyway," Dr. Okoro replied. "But it's harder, more expensive, more dangerous for everyone. We'd prefer cooperation, trade, cultural exchange, scientific collaboration. We have a lot to learn from older species." She paused. "And apparently, you have some things to learn from us." There was no arrogance in her tone, just statement of fact, which somehow made it more impactful. "What guarantees can you offer?" Thel asked. "That humanity won't use its technological advantages to expand aggressively. That you won't become the conquerors." "The same guarantees any species can offer," Dr. Okoro said. "Our word, our track record, our demonstrated restraint. We could have destroyed your entire fleet. We didn't. We could have used our access to your networks to sabotage your infrastructure. We didn't. We could have struck first, hit your shipyards and command centers before you even mobilized. We didn't." She spread her hands. "We only fight when we're attacked. That's not a guarantee, it's just who we are." "Words," Kren spat. "Meaningless words from a species that has existed for barely an eye blink of galactic time. Then judge us by actions." Dr. Okoro replied. "Admiral Wren told you the engagement could have lasted 3 seconds. Want to know why it lasted 14? Because we were simultaneously hacking your fleet's communication systems to identify which ships carried the most crew members. We prioritized targets with smaller complements: drone ships, automated vessels, command ships with skeleton crews. We were trying to minimize casualties even while defending ourselves." The chamber went silent. 14 seconds. "Wasn't about sending a message," Dr. Okoro continued softly. "It was about giving your crews time to evacuate. About choosing targets that would break your formation without maximizing death. You lost 400,000 people, and each one is a tragedy. But if we'd gone for maximum destruction, that number would have been 2 million. We chose mercy over efficiency." Kessindra felt something break inside her, some fundamental assumption about the nature of warfare and power. The humans hadn't just defeated them. They'd defeated them while actively trying to reduce casualties. The level of capability that required, the coordination, the split-second decision-making during combat. "Why?" she asked, simply. "Why show mercy to invaders?" Dr. Okoro smiled sadly. "Because we remember being invaded. Not by aliens, by each other. Humans spent thousands of years conquering, colonizing, subjugating each other. We know what it's like to be on both sides. We know how cycles of violence perpetuate themselves. So when we finally unified, when we reached the stars, we made a decision. We would defend ourselves absolutely, but we would never glorify death, never treat casualties as acceptable costs. Every being that dies in conflict is a failure of diplomacy, A failure of imagination. Idealistic nonsense. General Morath muttered. War is mathematics. Sometimes death is necessary. We don't deny that, Dr. Okoro agreed. But we refuse to accept it without question. Every simulation we ran before your attack included casualty projections. Every weapons system we designed included discrimination protocols. It's harder, it's more complicated, but it's who we decided to be. And if a species attacks you that doesn't share these values? Kessindra asked. If you face an enemy that shows no mercy, then they learn what targeted efficiency looks like. Dr. Okoro replied, and for just a moment something cold and hard flashed in her eyes. Our restraint is a choice, not a weakness. We can eliminate threats with absolute precision when necessary. We just prefer not to make it necessary. The implied threat hung in the air, polite, professional, and absolutely terrifying. Humanity could be merciful or merciless, and they chose which based on the circumstances. That level of controlled lethality was perhaps more frightening than mindless aggression. What does humanity propose? Kessindra asked finally. What terms would satisfy you? Recognition of sovereign territory. Dr. Okoro said. Our solar system and any colonies we establish through legitimate expansion, trade agreements on equitable terms. Exchange of scientific knowledge with appropriate security protocols, obviously. Representation in galactic forums. Basically, we want a seat at the table. Not the head of the table, just a seat. And your weapons? Your technological capabilities? Remain our business, Dr. Okoro replied firmly. We're willing to share civilian technology, medical advances, agricultural systems, space habitation techniques, but our defensive capabilities are non-negotiable. We will not make ourselves vulnerable. Then how can we trust you? Kryn demanded. How do we know you won't use that technology to expand aggressively? Same way we trust you, Dr. Okoro said. We watch each other. We maintain diplomatic channels. We build relationships based on mutual benefit. Trust isn't granted, it's earned through years of consistent behavior. She looked around the chamber. But here's the thing, we've already demonstrated our capabilities. We've proven we can defend ourselves. The question isn't whether you can trust us, it's whether you can afford not to. It was manipulation. Kessindra realized. Elegant, professional manipulation. Dr. Okoro was offering partnership while making it clear that the alternative was continued conflict against an opponent who had already proven superior. She was giving the Ascendancy a way to save face, to turn defeat into a negotiated peace that could be presented as mutual agreement. It was brilliant. I support these terms, Kessindra announced, with modifications and details to be negotiated, but the fundamental framework is acceptable. Voices erupted across the chamber, some in agreement, others in protest. But Kessindra noticed that even the opposition was less vehement than before. The reality of their situation was sinking in. They could negotiate with humanity as equals, or they could fight a war they would likely lose. When the voting concluded 2 hours later, the measure passed. Not unanimously. Several militant species abstained or voted against, but by sufficient margin to establish policy. The Velthric Ascendancy would recognize human sovereignty and open formal diplomatic relations. Dr. Okoro remained throughout the session, answering questions, clarifying positions, demonstrating a depth of knowledge about Ascendancy politics that confirmed the extent of human intelligence penetration. By the time she departed, she had scheduled 17 bilateral meetings with individual species representatives and established a timeline for treaty negotiations. Kessindra walked her to the docking bay where a human shuttle waited. A sleek vessel that somehow registered on sensors as 3 different ship types simultaneously. Another demonstration of their technological sophistication. You handled that well, Kessindra said. The Council is not easily swayed. We've been preparing for this conversation for 8 years, Dr. Okoro replied. Since we first detected your scout probes and realized we weren't alone, we knew eventually it would come to this. Either peaceful coexistence or conflict. We spent those years getting ready for both options. The weapons, the deception, the intelligence operations, all of it was preparation. All of it was necessity, Dr. Okoro corrected. We hoped for peace. We prepared for war. We're very good at holding contradictory positions simultaneously. That must be exhausting. It's human nature. Dr. Okoro paused at the shuttle entrance. Can I ask you something, High Arbiter? What will you tell your people about this? About the defeat? Kessindra considered the question. Her entire career had been built on certainty, on the mathematical precision of ascendancy superiority. That certainty had been shattered in 14 seconds. The truth, she said finally, that we encountered a species more capable than we anticipated, that our calculations were incomplete, that the universe is more complex than our models suggested. She met Dr. Okoro's eyes. And that perhaps being the strongest doesn't mean being the wisest. Dr. Okoro smiled. That's a good start. For what it's worth, we don't want to be your enemy. We just refuse to be your subjects. There's a difference. I'm beginning to understand that. The human diplomat boarded her shuttle, and Kessindra watched it depart, a tiny vessel carrying a representative of a species that had just redefined galactic politics. As the shuttle engaged its drive and vanished into faster than light, she wondered what other surprises humanity had prepared. Later, in her private quarters, Kessindra reviewed the full battle recordings. She watched the engagement from every angle, analyzing each moment. The human weapons had fired with impossible precision. Their targeting algorithms had calculated trajectories accounting for evasive maneuvers that hadn't happened yet. They had predicted ascendancy responses and countered them before they occurred. It was like fighting an opponent who could see the future, but they couldn't see the future. Kessindra realized they had just studied the ascendancy so thoroughly, understood their doctrine so completely, that they could predict responses with near-perfect accuracy. It was psychology weaponized, intelligence transformed into tactical advantage. A message notification appeared on her console. From Admiral. She hesitated, then opened it. Hi, Arbiter Kessindra. By now you've had time to review the engagement. I wanted to reach out personally to say this. We took no pleasure in the deaths of your crew. Every casualty weighs on us. War is failure wrapped in necessity. And we failed to prevent it. But we also prevented something worse, a prolonged conflict that would have cost millions of lives on both sides. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do is end a fight quickly. I hope we never have to fight again. But if we do, I hope you'll remember we tried to find another way. Respectfully, Admiral Marcus Wren. Kessindra read the message 3 times. There was no gloating, no triumph, just acknowledgement of shared loss and a hope for better outcomes. It was, she realized, exactly what she would have written if their positions were reversed. Perhaps humanity truly was different. Or perhaps power and restraint could coexist after all. 3 months later, the Treaty of Mars was signed, humanity's first formal diplomatic agreement with galactic civilization. It recognized human sovereignty, established trade protocols, and created frameworks for scientific cooperation. Several ascendancy species refused to sign, maintaining that humanity's demonstration of force was unacceptable. But most recognized the practical reality. Humanity existed. Humanity was powerful, and humanity was willing to negotiate. The alternative was another war nobody wanted. Kessindra attended the signing ceremony on Mars, humanity's 4th planet. It was a barren world made habitable through terraforming technology that shouldn't have been possible yet. Another reminder of human capabilities. Dr. Okoro greeted her personally, along with Admiral Wren and a delegation of human officials. They were diverse in appearance, different skin colors, facial features, body types, united by nothing except shared purpose. Thank you for coming, Dr. Okoro said. This means a great deal to us. It means a great deal to everyone, Kessindra replied. A new chapter in galactic history. Let's hope it's a better chapter than the last one, Wren added. He extended his hand, a human gesture of greeting. Kessindra had learned about it during cultural preparation. She gripped his hand carefully, mindful of her greater strength. Agreed, Admiral. Let us work toward a future where calculations are unnecessary, because understanding makes them obsolete. Wren smiled. I'll drink to that. The ceremony proceeded smoothly. Speeches were given. Documents were signed. Toasts were made with beverages carefully selected to be compatible with each species' biochemistry. It was all very civilized and optimistic. But Kessindra noticed the security measures. The human guards positioned at strategic points, armed with weapons she couldn't identify, the sensors tracking every movement in the chamber. The subtle ways doors were reinforced and escape routes clearly marked. Humanity hoped for peace, but they remained prepared for war. It was, she decided, an excellent philosophy. As the ceremony concluded and delegates mingled, a young human approached Kessindra, male perhaps in his 20s by their standards. He wore a military uniform, with insignia she didn't recognize. "Hi, Arbiter. I'm Lieutenant Chen, Weapons Systems Engineering. I wanted to thank you." "Thank me? For what?" "For surviving," Chen said simply. "My entire team has been developing the lunar defense grid for 6 years. We knew someday we'd have to use it, but we never wanted to. Having you here, signing a treaty instead of fighting another battle, it means we didn't build those weapons for nothing. We built them to prevent war, and that's exactly what they did." Kessindra studied the young human. He couldn't be more than 30 years old, which meant he'd spent a fifth of his life building weapons to fight enemies that might never come. "That must have been difficult," she said. "To dedicate yourself to something you hoped would never be used." "That's the point, though," Chen replied. "The best weapon is the one you never have to fire. Admiral Ren taught us that. He said victory isn't about winning fights, it's about avoiding them without surrendering your principles." Wise words. He's a good teacher. Chen hesitated. "Can I ask you something? In your analysis of the battle, did you figure out how we hid the power generation, then theorized artificial singularities? Was he correct?" Chen grinned. "Partially. We're actually using quantum vacuum energy extraction, tapping zero-point fluctuations in space-time itself. The singularities are just power regulators. But yeah, the math works similar enough that his guess was close. Quantum vacuum energy." Kessindra had heard theoretical discussions of such technology, but always dismissed it as centuries away from practical application, and here was a lieutenant casually mentioning it as solved problem. "How did you develop this so quickly?" she asked. "We didn't," Chen replied. "We've been working on it for 70 years, since we first achieved sustained fusion and realized we'd need something better eventually. Most of our breakthrough discoveries happened decades ago. We just kept them quiet, kept improving them, kept pushing the boundaries. By the time your scouts showed up, we'd already mastered the basics. We just needed to weaponize them. 70 years. Multiple generations of scientists and engineers working in secret, preparing for a threat that might never materialize. The dedication was staggering. Your species has remarkable patience," Kessindra observed. "We have remarkable memory," Chen corrected. "We remember every time in our history that being unprepared led to catastrophe. We remember every invasion, every conquest, every subjugation. So when we reached the stars, we promised ourselves, never again, never caught off guard, never helpless." He smiled. "Turns out that promise took a lot of work to keep, but you kept it." "We did. And hopefully, now that we've proven we can defend ourselves, we won't need to anymore. Hopefully this treaty means we can focus on exploration and discovery instead of weapons development." Kessindra wanted to believe that, but she'd lived long enough to know that peace was maintained through strength, that treaties lasted only as long as the power balance remained stable. Still, perhaps humanity's approach offered something new. Perhaps deterrence through demonstrated capability could create space for genuine cooperation. "I hope you're right, Lieutenant," she said. "For all our sakes." The reception continued late into the Martian evening. Kessindra found herself in conversation with various humans, each offering different perspectives on the conflict and its resolution. Scientists excited about potential collaboration, military officers cautiously optimistic about reduced tensions, politicians carefully managing expectations while building relationships. They were complex beings, she realized. Not the primitive upstarts the Ascendancy had assumed, but a species wrestling with their own nature, capable of violence, but striving for peace, powerful but seeking partnership, confident but remaining humble about their place in the cosmos. As she prepared to depart, Admiral Ren approached one final time. "Hi, Arbiter, before you leave, I wanted to give you something." He handed her a small device. "It's a historical archive. Human history, the unfiltered version. Wars, atrocities, achievements, failures, all of it. I figure if we're going to be neighbors, you should know who we really are. Kessindra accepted the device carefully. Why share this? It could reveal weaknesses, vulnerabilities. Because trust requires honesty, Ren replied. You shared your tactical data after the engagement. Affair's fair. Besides, our history is our strength. We survived thousands of years of self-inflicted catastrophe and managed to unify anyway. That's not a weakness, that's resilience, or stubbornness. Same thing from different angles. Ren smiled. Safe travels, High Arbiter. I look forward to our next meeting being as boring as possible. Agreed, Admiral. Profoundly agreed. The journey back to Velthric Prime took 3 days. Kessindra spent them reviewing the human archive, absorbing centuries of their history. Wars fought over resources, religion, ideology, genocides and slavery and oppression, but also art and music and literature, scientific breakthroughs and medical advances and humanitarian efforts. The same species capable of atomic warfare had also eradicated diseases and fed billions. They contained multitudes. The final entry in the archive was a speech given 50 years earlier by a human leader named President Natasha Volkov, delivered during the foundation of their unified global government. We stand today at a crossroads between who we were and who we choose to become. Our history is written in blood and brilliance, in cruelty and compassion. We have been both monster and hero, oppressor and liberator. As we reach for the stars, we carry all of this with us. The scars and the wisdom, the mistakes and the lessons. Let us remember that strength without restraint leads to tyranny. That power without principle leads to ruin. That survival without morality is mere existence. We will defend ourselves absolutely, but we will not become what we defend against. This is our covenant with the future, our promise to species we have yet to meet. Humanity will be strong, but humanity will be just. And when we stand before the universe, we will stand as proof that a violent past does not determine a peaceful future. Kessindra read those words 3 times, hearing echoes of Dr. Okoro's statements, of Admiral Ren's philosophy, of Lieutenant Chen's hope. They had meant it. All of it. The restraint wasn't weakness or naivety. It was deliberate choice backed by absolute capability. They could end threats in 3 seconds, but chose 14 to minimize casualties. They could have obliterated the fleet, but chose to allow survivors. They could have followed victory with conquest, but chose negotiation instead. Perhaps that was true power. Not the ability to destroy, but the discipline to choose when destruction was necessary and when it was merely convenient. Her report to the Council was thorough and honest. She detailed humanity's capabilities, their philosophy, their potential as allies or enemies. She recommended continued diplomatic engagement, careful monitoring, and maintenance of defensive readiness. But she also recommended something unprecedented: soliciting human consultation on military doctrine. They defeated us, she told the assembled representatives. Not because they were stronger, though they are, but because they understood us better than we understood ourselves. That's a skill worth learning. The recommendation sparked immediate controversy, but Kessindra expected that. Change always met resistance. But seeds of new thinking had been planted, and given time, they might flourish. 6 months after the engagement, Kessindra received another message from Admiral Ren. This one contained a single image: human and Velthric engineers working together on a joint research project, examining a quantum field generator. The caption read, "Building the future, one collaboration at a time." She smiled, a difficult expression for her species, but one she'd been practicing. Then she forwarded the image to her staff with a note: "This is what victory actually looks like." Because humanity had been right. The engagement hadn't lasted 6 minutes. It had taken 14 seconds instead. But the real battle, the one for lasting peace and mutual understanding, was just beginning. And this time everyone was on the same side.